Welcome back to the 2-Pointers Podcast. I'm Trevor Everett, and before we jump into today's episode with friend of the program, long time now, a couple of years, Ryan Hammer, who's been on many shows here, Trivia Showdown, draft recap now. I think this is number 3, so this should be really fun. Before we jump into that with Ryan, obviously this draft's been really interesting. I think his perspective on a lot of college guys this year that I think are high level, especially some older college guys. We'll get into that. Ryan's obviously really great in the college space as well as the draft. That's why we got him here. Before we jump into it, SeatGeek. Obviously, you're not going to be going to basketball events unless you're going to TBT or something like that. Maybe the Olympics. Maybe you guys are in Paris. But if you are, use code 2Pointers, $20 off your first purchase. Link in the top of the description will take you there. SeatGeek is one of the best ticketing apps out there right now. You get a deal score out of 1 through 10, red, green, yellow. You get to tell really how good of a deal and how good of a seat you're going to get before you go. We greatly appreciate SeatGeek's support. Again, maybe not basketball, maybe it's baseball, concerts, whatever it is. If you're having fun this summer, use code 2Pointers and you'll get $20 off your first purchase there. So, promo out of the way. Greatly appreciate Ryan's patience on that. But without further ado, we are joined by, again, like I said, my friend Ryan Hammer. How are you?
I'm good. It's good to be back. Like you said, this is the third year, but we've also done many in between. So, but it's been a little gap for us. So I'm happy to be here.
I greatly enjoy every few months people you being like, yeah, that Ryan Hammer and Jim Range Trivia Showdown was one of the funniest things that you put out, and it's always great when it comes back up and comes back out, and people are like, oh no, I was listening to old Trivia Showdowns and I found this, and I'm like, oh great.
That was Carl putting me and Alex in the dirt the whole time.
Oh man, Carl, like I think his score. I don't want to spoil anything because this will go out before this summer's, but I think his score gets pretty rivaled this offseason. So I got a couple of them already preloaded in the chamber. Nice. But we are here to talk about the draft, obviously. For those that followed me, understand that this was kind of the year I had to take a little bit of a back seat for some different reasons, but still kept up with it, still followed it, still understood really what I felt. Didn't have obviously put out a big board or a mock or anything like that, but I have some feelings on some guys that I just think give or take I think are going to work out or not going to work out or whatever. And we'll get into that today. We'll jump through some winners and losers from a guy that's covered this draft very, very well, even when people were saying it was really bad years ago. Let people know where they can find you. Obviously, it's Ryan Hammer 09. I got it right this time. It'll be in the top of the description as well for all socials, TikTok, things like that. Making some great content, especially as we get into college basketball season. So, first of all, let people know where they can find you, and then we'll jump into it.
No, you got it. TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, X. Just search my name. It should come up. If it doesn't, then I've done something wrong. So.
Are you doing anything fun between, like, because the lull's about to happen, like free agency, as we're recording this, free agency is kind of in its full swing. A couple of big deals have happened, we may allude to, but that'll be its own show here in the future. Anything, I know there's like this gap, it's like August-ish, and then, September is really where we start preparing for college again. I know you got to start prepping that stuff, but anything you're doing this summer?
Yeah, no, I gotta be honest, I'm gonna do my best. I'm getting married in September, so I gotta allocate time to that before anything, otherwise I get my head chopped off.
That's right.
But I honestly just need to relax and stuff like that. I'm going to summer league. I'm doing like things and some camps and stuff like that. But otherwise, I'll keep the content going, obviously, and do some prep stuff for the college season, like analyzing every team and conference, whatever and stuff. But nothing crazy. I need time to get my mental sanity back.
I'll do this on the fly. I hate to do this to you, but right now, as we know it, is there somebody that's not like, I just got to do, like, we don't do this all the time. We should do this more. But is there any college team right now that maybe people are picking the Dukes, the UConns, whatever? Like, if someone put a gun to my head right now and said, you got to pick a college basketball national champion, I'd be like, A, it's too early, and B, I'd go with UConn because they returned. It's true. They returned Dan Hurley. They got McNeely. They got all these other guys. They got guys back. Like, look, I know they lost a ton of draft picks, but at the same, we'll get into those guys in just a second. But I just want to know, like, is there somebody right now that like isn't one of those 2-3 that you're like, man, I really like what they've done so far?
Yeah, it won't be their year, but I think Gonzaga's got a real strong chance this year as of right now. And I'm a Gonzaga truther, and it never ends up panning out. But I think this team returning as much as they have with additions that they've made, like scoring additions on the wing, they've piqued my fancy. They've tickled my pickle a little bit.
Love it. I've got my eye on Arizona. I've got my eye on
Yeah.
Tommy Lloyd and the Wildcats. That's kind of the one I'm bookmarking here. I'm only doing the ACC and the CAA for the magazine this year, so got to keep my eyes focused on those two conferences there.
Yeah.
So, all right, we'll jump into it. Ryan's winners and losers. I'll save this other question for later. Who's your biggest winner of the draft?
Biggest winner is honestly tough. I didn't come away with thinking like, damn, this one team like absolutely blew me out of the water and killed everybody. A lot of people will say it's the T-Wolves, I think, because people know Terrence Shannon and they know Rob, and I think they were definitely a winner. So I guess I could start with them because I didn't expect only a 2031 pick and a 2030 swap to get them into pick 8 out of nowhere and be able to get Rob when he's on the board. I like the fit there a lot. I think he's going to have a couple of like massive games in the playoffs and then down the stretch where people are going to be like, yo, this guy's crazy. Like, the NBA fans that don't know him so well, but he'll be a key role off the bench. And I think Terrence Shannon was the guy, him and Baylor Shire were the two guys that I said at 27, go get one of them because you need wing depth, you need wing scoring, and guys that can play right now. You get one of those and you're good. So that made sense to me. But like I said, like there was no one. They weren't like I wasn't like, oh my god, this is an unbelievable draft, A plus, 100%. So yeah.
The whole I like that you made the Baylor Shimer comment. I know that was a guy that you were really, really strongly in on, I would say. And it felt Celtics fans were clamoring for him days before the draft, and then all of a sudden, like, okay, is he really going to be there? You know, people were saying maybe he'd rise, whatever, and I think he fell right in the perfect spot in the team that he's going to play next year. I mean, he's going to play. At least we hope. Like, I know these guys, like, they took some swings on Jordan Walsh's or whatever, but he's the most ready guy they can get, and he was an incredible pickup for them. All right, we'll flip it then. How about a loser? How about a loser for Ryan Hammer? I know it's early. I know my whole rule is nobody's a loser until after the first contract. Like, I get that.
Kyle Filipowski's family is probably the loser that you don't need years to figure that out because I have never seen anything like this happen, like break so fast. And I'm so impressed that Duke, of course it was Duke though, Duke and Kentucky can do that, but they kept that under wraps because they had to know. They had to know, the teammates had to know, his friends had to know, like people had to know what's going on in some way. And obviously his family knew and they were kind of keeping it tied up too. But it is crazy how all that stuff has panned out. I don't know every ounce of detail, but obviously some sticky situation.
I don't know what to believe. That's that's like where I begin with this. I'm like, I believe some of it, right? Like, what is it? The two sides of a story and the truth lies somewhere in the middle, right? I don't know what the middle is here. That's kind of the issue. Is like, who's right, who's wrong. He hasn't really said anything, and then for us basketball guys to just enjoy this story full circle, he went to Utah.
People don't realize that. People are like, oh, like that's why he fell to the Jazz and second. I'm like, do you not realize he's going to Utah? Like, do you think that NBA teams were like, damn, I gotta stay away from all this crap? So, and the Utah was like, oh no, they're gonna love it here. Then they're gonna love it. We're definitely taking him at 32. I honestly don't know how it all planned out. I don't know if it was a reason for him dropping it all, but it's crazy. And like you said, though, he hasn't said anything, and neither has the girlfriend. So that makes me think that it's probably all true what we've heard, but I don't know.
This is the closest thing we basketball guys have gotten to a Larry Tunsil situation. For those that might not remember the gas mask, literally like 4 hours before the draft, like he's supposed to be like the best guard in the last 5 years. He ends up being a pretty good guard in the NFL, but we're talking like pre-draft. Some of the expectations were kind of lofty, and a gas mask pic comes out of him like smoking out of a gas mask, and people are like, oh, well, teams are like, well, I guess he's a third rounder now. Like, there's just some stuff where I'm like, guys, once all this crap like goes away, like they just play. And if Kyle Filipowski's good, I'm not saying he's Larry Tunsil. I think the differences of what we think these guys are maybe are a little different there. But look, if they roll the ball out there in August and September and he's good, like who cares? All this is just going to disappear. We're going to forget about it like some other guys and some of their offseason stuff that we'll kind of avoid right now. A couple of things that I kind of like, just I wouldn't call them winners, losers, or nothing like that, but just for the Spurs to go out and get Castle, and for guys to think that like, okay, well, what about this backcourt with Rob? You mentioned Minnesota. Like for San Antonio to do so much to be thinking about the future for Victor Wembanyama, I think is a big winner. Like I know his development, his track. Like I think a lot of people expected the Spurs to just like stink next year, and like I think it's okay if they do. But I made this point to somebody recently. the clock is ticking. Like the clock was ticking the moment they got the lottery ball for Victor, and you already have to be thinking about him. And then he had the year he had where he was arguably one of the best defensive players we've seen as a rookie ever, if not the best. And they got a guy like Castle that they can continue to build around him. And I think what the Spurs did was really incredible. Not really a question there, but any thoughts on like the Spurs and where that kind of direction, where they're headed, I think is kind of going to help that. I know Chris Paul, you can allude to that. You know,
when the Rob thing went down, I was like, oh, I like them having two different guard options. They're completely opposite style players. I like that. They ended up picking Juan Nunez in the second round, who probably won't really get cracked. He might even be a stash at some point, but they needed more guard depth. So now seeing that they brought in Chris Paul makes a lot of sense, obviously, because he'll be able to teach Castle everything he needs to be a legit point guard. Because that's my worry. I don't think he's a legit point guard as is, even though he says he is, and he was in high school, not at UConn. Can he be? Yeah, we'll see how kind of their system pans out. But I do agree with you. If I had to say, did they have a good draft or did they win or lose? I'd say they had a good draft. I'd say they were one of the winners for sure. And then, I love Harrison Ingram also. I know you like him too. So
yes,
I was happy he landed there also.
I had a great time watching him up close the last couple of years. I know you don't love the winners losers thing. That's why I carved out only a few minutes for it at the beginning, because we've done this before. I get it, right? Like grading stuff and winners losers, it's hard. But I'll ask you this. This is, I'm never going to give you like the easy questions, right? Who was the bigger winner this year? Was it France or was it UConn?
You asked me about winners. I have a list of 5 things here. It literally says T-Wolves, UConn, France in order, and we just talked. I swear. Yes. I wish I could share my screen. It's a different computer, so I can't.
It's cool. It's cool.
Actually.
I believe you.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I think I expected UConn to get all 4 guys drafted. Obviously, Cam and Newton. Like, there was a chance that one of them could go undrafted. Obviously, more likely Cam. Didn't surprise me. France, again, we knew that was going to happen, but like Melvin Nijinsa got drafted also. Like, they have a ton of guys getting next year. They had a lot of guys get undrafted contracts also. Like, I think France, because it's overwhelming and it's like a new thing, where UConn, it's like, yeah, well, they're UConn. So that kind of made sense. And those 4 guys are good and they're winners and whatever. And you knew that 2 of them, if not at least 3, probably 4 would get drafted. So the French unknown guys, more unknown at least, I'd say more France, because it's crazy. It's a revolution, literally a revolution.
All right, so you said you have those 3. You have those 3 in order there, which I think, again, you could screenshot it and send it to me later. I'll put it in the post-production. I think it's hilarious that ended up being that way. What else you got on the winners list? I want to pick apart some losers soon.
Another college, Colorado, also, which kind of snuck under the radar there, where like KJ was probably always going to get drafted also, but they had 2 first-round picks. They had 3 guys go in the top 42 or whatever it was with those, and Colorado is not one that gets a ton of draft produces a lot of draft players at all, drafted guys. Like Derek White is the most notable one that comes to mind out of really such a small handful. So having 3 guys in the same cycle for a team that they were good by their own standard, but they were not great at all. Like, they were a 10 seed and everything, ended up in the tournament and the play-in or something like that. And they were dangerous, but they weren't this amazing team. It's like, wow, Colorado had such an amazing year. They got 3 guys drafted because of it. Like, they were good, but they weren't amazing. So that was cool to see also. I wrote down your Lakers, and I wrote down the Wizards also.
All right, well, talk about the Wizards a little bit, because the Lakers I've got a question for that in the random things that I'll throw at you that I never told you about that we do every year. Why the Wizards? Because a lot of people are going to look at the SAR pick like, okay, yeah, they won because they got him second versus first, and we're going to get to the Hawks in a minute. Like, I
don't want to.
This is a safe space, so we'll get to it. But talk about the Wizards. I think a lot of people aren't going to be feeling that way necessarily a week later. It's
not even about that. It's about SAR. Like, whether it was SAR or Risa Shea or whoever they were going to take at 2, whoever it was going to be, they got a top guy at 2 for sure. I like SAR. I love how they balanced their picks. So they came in with 2, 26, and 51, and ended up drafting at 2, 14, and 24. I think they ended up going up to with the Knicks or something like that, right? At that pick from 26. And they balanced out their 3 picks so well with, I think, good floor, a lot of upside on those 3 guys. Like Bub Carrington, Keyshawn George, Alex Sarr, a ton of upside and a lot of versatility in their skill sets. They got a true playmaking guard. They got a wing who is super versatile and one of my guys and favorite guys in the class. And they got a big who fits the modern NBA well and can defend very well. So they really filled out, like, they're not trying to fill out a rotation necessarily, but they're building a team right there. Those 3 guys can be maybe not all cornerstones per se, but they can all kind of move the needle forward. And eventually they could, if you told me they were all three of them were starting in 3 years, I'd be like, yep, that makes sense. So I like the way they attacked. I like the way they were aggressive. I like Denny. I understand they went to move off him, and I thought they got decent capital out of it too. So
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up at the very end there the Denny move, because it at the time it was completely perplexing.
mm-hmm.
Because like I know that you said they traded Dylan Jones there to the Thunder. I'm trying to find the way the NBA.com has all these picks. I'm trying to make sure I get the Wizards picks right.
Yeah,
They end up getting. I know you like George a lot there from Miami. Somebody that I think you were honestly higher on him than most people I know. And so I'm glad that worked out there. Obviously, I'm going to take your word for some of his stuff this year. Miami, bottom of the ACC, going from the top to the bottom. It was an interesting year. I think if he was on that team previously, I think he would have been probably undervalued, but probably comes back and plays another year.
Yeah.
Let me give you a loser that I think is going to go underrated. I don't have exactly the agent in front of me for this, but Bobby Klintman. To go from, I know Wake Forest isn't exactly the whatever. Where's he from? He's like not from the United States, right?
Sweden,
not exactly the Swedish player forward factory. Okay, like I'm well aware of that, right? Wake Forest is not that. I love Coach Forbes, but to still think that wasn't, like, there were better options than going to the NBL and potentially being a guy that we all thought could have been a lottery pick in this draft last year at this time. I think obviously the improvements where we thought they were going to be this time last year is probably a big part of that.
Yeah.
But to go 37 and end up in Detroit after being a guy that I think was somebody that if he had a good year wherever it was, I just wasn't sure it was the NBL. I can't call Bobby Klintman a winner for the situation. How the committee around him handled it.
Yeah, it's weird. Like last year, right when the international withdrawal deadline came about, the college one first, he said he's staying in, and then he would withdraw the international one. He was like, I'm either going to go play international or stay, whatever. There was a word that he had a promise in the first round. So everyone's like, great. Why would you leave then? Especially in a good draft class, like you have a first round promise. It's your upside play. You're definitely going to stay. And we don't know. I don't know what happened, obviously, fully. But it's interesting to see him have some kind of, whether it's a promise or interest in the first round or some kind of good feedback, and then say, great, I'm going to go out so that I can either guarantee I'm a first round or try to be a lottery pick in a weaker class next year and stuff like that. And it didn't go well. I'm 100% with you. And I think, honestly, like the NBL as a whole is probably a loser because, yeah, they had Sarr go high, but like if he was coming out of OT or he was coming out of freaking wherever, like he still would have went high. I don't think that's really fair to say. I say that about the Thompson twins last year, where like, great, OT got these great players. They didn't make them into great players. They were always going to go high. So Sarr was always going to go high. But what's his face? AJ Johnson ended up going in the first round, which is another wild pick. But Trenton Flowers went undrafted. Bobby Klintman went really late. And I just don't think that the NBL has been churning these guys like they want to with the Next Stars program that they're working on and trying to develop more into. So
just another chapter in the developmental league where, like, I'm still open to the idea of OT being something. And, every bit of PR that you see that's some YouTuber going inside of there and giving you what the facility looks like. I'm in until it doesn't work. And they've gotten guys drafted so far, and it is what it is. And the NBL, like you just said, has had its faults there. Look, the G League Ignite had a guy, and they had Buzelis go 11th back to his home team. They had Rod Holland go 5th, a guy who I know you're very high on. Yeah. I'll find a way to weasel a Rod Holland question here later. All right, we're getting close to 20 minutes, so give me any other winners, losers, anything you got from just like things you want to get out there that are related to that.
No, I didn't have much. I didn't love the Hornets picking or the Bucks pick with Salon or AJ Johnson. I think they're upside picks that were unnecessary at the spots they were at, especially the Bucks pick because they need guys. They needed certain players to help them now into the rotation. They need another playmaking guard. I would have loved them to take Tyler Kolek or AJ Mitchell or something like that. I did like Tyler Smith because they need athleticism on the wing. They need shooting and spacing also in their big room and depth in the front court. So I like Tyler Smith I think it was 33 and 23. And realistically, you should have flipped those two, to be honest, like in my eyes. But it didn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. I just didn't see that pick. And the Hornets at 6, like I understand the vision with Salon a little bit, and they're like, you know what, let's just take him and swing for the fences here because we have young Miller and LaMelo are still really young, and I just don't think it was the best option on the board. That's all.
So who would you have taken there? Because after, just for context, Klingon, Dillingham went, of course, traded to Timberwolves. Edey, Cody Williams, Buzelis, Topic, Devin Carter, and Bob Carrington round out the top 14. Let's just say it's from those guys.
I would have went personally. I would have went Buzelis or Connect. Obviously, the Connect thing is a whole another world, and you said we'll talk about it. But Buzelis, if they want upside, they should have went Buzelis. I think he has the most upside in the class. Like, I think so. The Salon upside has scouts kind of fell in love with the idea that he has the most upside in the class, which he doesn't in the last month leading up to the draft because he was still playing a little bit, and then into the international little draft comment that they do. And I think Buzelis is a better upside swing at that pick. That's all.
I'm gonna quote our mutual friend Carl Heiser: "If can shoot good, why no shoot good?" so is I mean, look, I never thought of it this way, but it's a really funny way to put it, and it's really true. Is Buzelis a good shooter?
I don't think he's a good shooter. I would not classify. You can't in good faith classify him as a good shooter. Like, I can never say that. Can he become a good shooter? Yes, but he's not right now. There's no way I could say that.
27% from three, 2 years, and then dividing those 2 years is a 42% 3-point shooting year. A senior year of high school where we're all if we're good, basketball players. I mean, let's be real. That's where guys get paid. That's where they get the college gig. All right. I just had to make sure I threw that nugget in there for him because I thought that was a hilarious video that should have done a lot better than it did. Because it was like I you know how he is. He'll start off with something really funny and light, and then it'll be a perfect breakdown about something, and then you're like, it's still hilarious that at the end it's like, well, I guess not shoot good.
and he's such a smart guy and so well spoken. So whenever he says something like that, I'm like, I'm locked in. I'm locked in, Carl.
I will link it below because it's such a great breakdown of Buzelis' shooting over the last 3 years, and then it still ends with the, oh no, he can't not shoot good.
Yeah, exactly.
It's great. I love it.
Yeah.
All right. Look, I knew this was going to be the way it was when I sent you the rundown because I don't have a lot of winners and losers either. And the fact that you covered this draft, more than I did, especially, but more than a lot of people did, and you still come away with this as like I'm just happy with where things kind of landed. This is how I feel. Yeah. There's a few kind of highlights. So I gathered some questions that are just things that I took away over the last couple of really months, but then leading into the draft, kind of things that kind of may have answered them, or now I have questions moving forward. So before we do any of that, this is a safe space. Let's talk about the Hawks for a minute.
It's okay.
I know where. Look, I watched all the videos. I didn't watch a lot of your stuff, so intentionally, so that I would be kind of prepared to talk about things that you might say and react to them. But ultimately, for the listeners that might not, maybe clicking on this, going, okay, I've seen a couple of his videos. Maybe I'm not aware of what his Hawks opinions are of this draft, but just talk about what happened. Talk about what could have happened potentially, in your opinion. Anything around the Hawks draft?
Yeah, I think people will say that they thought Reece Shea was the number one prospect, so they went with him. He was the best player, so they evaluated trading down or out, whatever, and they said, you know what, Reece Shea is the number one guy. We want him. We're going to get him. We're going to sit here, and that might be true. I don't believe it in a second because I know what happened with Sarr and his agent. I heard him speak. I've seen everything about it. It's not even a theory. It's just like I'm pretty confident that Sarr's agent, who is Luka Doncic's agent, and did this with the Hawks in 2018, he didn't want Alex Sarr to go to the Hawks. Alex Sarr has outly said, I don't not want to go to the Hawks. He's like, I'm fine with that. There are better fits and not, but I'm not saying I don't want to go anywhere. I'll go number one gladly and go play there. I think that his agent said, you're not going to go there. We're going to do everything in our power. You're not going to work out there. You're not going to talk to them. You are going to go number 2 to Washington, play the 4 like we want you to, and kind of have every opportunity to do whatever you want in Washington, whereas you can't in Atlanta. And I think the Hawks, I honestly think that they wanted Sarr maybe a month and 2 months ago, and then they got bullied into not taking him, even though they still could have. And they just convinced themselves that was okay and that Reece Shea was number 1. And they're like, you know what? We don't want you anyway. Reece Shea, Zach is number 1. And I don't think that they actually believe that. And if they do, I question their analysis because I just don't think that Reece Shea should be considered for number 1 pick. I think he's a good player and I think he might be very good. But at best, I think he's like an MPJ level guy, which again, as a Hawks fan, we could very much use. So that would be great. But I think they got bullied out of it and they didn't do their due diligence enough of trying to actually trade out and get value from Washington or the Spurs or anybody that had any intent of trading up to 1. So
I just wonder how much of the trade out ability was even there by the time all of
Exactly.
this started to swirl. I think is kind of the place I eventually landed. But overall, as a whole, I know the whole Ricochet thing. But were you happy with the result of the other picks that kind of may have made up for that?
Trading AJ Griffin, I didn't like just for straight up for 45. I did not
Okay,
enjoy 44, whatever it was. I didn't
fair.
enjoy
Yeah.
that. I like getting Nikola Jurisic a lot. I think he's awesome for us, and having a Serbian Nikola seems to do well for teams in the NBA. So I'll take that gladly and run with it. But I didn't like giving up AJ Griffin straight up because we saw what he did his rookie year. Just because we didn't give him the right opportunity, the consistency and opportunity last year when we were playing just terribly.
Yeah.
I don't think it's fair to say, you know what, we're going to give up on a guy that was getting top 10 and top 5 consideration in his draft and fell because of some injury concerns. And we got lucky that we had him on our team at 16, and then we just traded him for literally 30 picks later, in draft capital. I that doesn't add up to me. I know that they're trying to cut in the tax, and that ties back into the ownership and Travis Schlenk, and they're going to he's my age, the guy who runs the team now. He knows absolutely zero how to run a team, and they don't want to pay the tax and all these things, and that, I don't know, it's a whole mess.
Anything else about the Hawks?
I don't know. I actually think we're better set up now for next year than we were last year. Like, our team is going to get better because in the last 3 years, when it's just Trey running an offense, we've been so much better than when there's two ball handlers on the floor, whether it's DeJounte or whether it was someone else. And we've been so much better. And my thing about I did a whole video about what I would do if I was the Hawks this offseason. And my goal is, you have Trey, who's small, can't defend that very well, and you just surround him with guys who are 6'10" and can shoot and defend. That's all you have to do. And that's exactly what they've done. I love Dyson Daniels, you know that. So, getting Dyson as the second smallest guy in the starting 5, love it. So I think they've done that pretty well.
Well, I'm with you. And it may not be, I hate to say this, where it's like a 10 seed, a 9 seed, whatever. Like, I'm sure Hawks fans are sick of that window there, in the East especially. But if it's a building block year where you can just say, okay, well, because is Trey going to be the next guy to just announce in next June and be like, I'm ready to go out, trade me?
Yeah.
Probably not. I think that I don't see that as a thing that would probably happen right this second. Obviously, things could go south, but I'm with you. I like the direction. I like that they're picking a direction, because I think a lot of teams in the middle ground, a la Charlotte, a team that they get compared to a lot in that range. I think they played each other in the play-in two out of the last 4 years or whatever, or 3 out of the last 4 years. Those two teams, you have to pick a direction eventually, and knowing that you have Trey, you at least have to try to win with Trey.
And people legitimately say when they traded DeJounte, people were like, oh, they're going to trade Trey now, they're blowing up. No, that's actually the opposite of what they're doing.
Yep.
They're just filling their lineup out better to try to win with Trey, even, and still trying to be young and build for the future at the same time. So I don't think they're making any moves other than trading Capella or maybe one more other thing.
So let's get into some questions that, like I said, I just had prepared for you. Since the last time we talked, your good buddy Jay Billis. Last time we did a pod, I don't think the Jay Billis videos have come out yet. So, how's Jay doing? First of all,
he's good. He's a fellow Carolinian. Is that a?
Yes, you got that right.
Okay, I was like, oh, it doesn't sound. It sounds okay. It sounds better now.
Different color Carolinian, but yeah, I got you.
Yeah, sure. Fellow Carolinian. I
good. Like Jay. To be clear, a lot of people hate Jay, just from a regionalization standpoint. Been on TV so long, the lawyer thing. There's so many. Duke obviously is a big reason. I actually really like Jay Billis, and I think he's incredible. So
he's been around the industry for so long, and I always look up to him because he does the college and draft like I try to do, and I enjoy doing also. So it's cool. And I don't speak to him every day of my life, but it's cool to catch up with him, text every now and then about what's going on. And I've been trying to link up with him in person, but we haven't. Just timing has been off. So, but he's a super nice guy. He's exactly what you would think he would be as a person, also. So
it's good. I've always wondered that about him. That has nothing to do with my question. He does. So I just was saying, it was just funny. Last time we did a pod, next thing you know, a month later, Jay Billis video comes out. I'm like, yeah, good for Ryan. He said on the broadcast, specifically about the guy I'm about to ask a question about, if you're good, you're tall enough. Is Rob Dillingham's height a problem to you?
That's a good way to put it. Is it a problem? It will be it is in certain aspects of the game, but it's not, because he wouldn't be as good if he was bigger. He wouldn't be as quick or shifty or be able to get his shot off so quick sometimes and create and stuff. But It's the same thing with Zach Edey, actually. Like Zach Edey and Rob Dillingham, I like put them in a group together because like when you have they have clear limitations in the NBA. Like there are certain things about them that are pretty evident. They're like that's not going to work in the NBA. It's just not going to work as it does in college and high school and whatever, and at previous levels. But when you do other things so well, like you have a role, you have a role in the NBA, and you have an opportunity. And like Zach Edey in like last year's draft class, that's why he came back on top of NIL and other things and trying to redeem himself from the tournament and stuff. But he wasn't going to go probably until the second round, early to mid second round, and because it was a good draft class, and there are again the limitations in his game, but he developed, he worked on a little bit, and there are just certain guys who are so good at one or two things that you have to respect that, and it's going to translate in some way. Like Rob is going to get buckets. He's going to have a couple of massive games at some point this year for the T-Wolves off the bench. So.
Yeah, I went back and forth again. I never put out a big board, and so like there's not really anything to track back this opinion. But just it's a guy that, of course, he could have played in Raleigh and not Lexington. People forget that. Rest in peace, that dream. But it worked out for him. It's a guy that ever since that recruiting trail and recruitment, I was able to kind of keep an eye on him. I always thought he was had some great potential, even with the size. And regardless of where he landed, he's a guy that's going to work hard. It seems like that's something that even with the Kentucky kind of Calipari exit or however that saga ends there, as we didn't know it anyway. But he's a guy that I think works hard, and I think he's a microwave scorer that is an incredible teammate. Guys, everybody that was on that team this year, anything that ever came up about him, they just seem to love him. So I think that'll carry well. I think him and Ant are going to be incredible together. I think that that's a thing you would say about Ant now that we're already saying about Rob. His rookie year. So right. I'm really excited for him. Obviously, Conley, Rob, Edwards, I think they got to get another, actual guard defender, I think would really help them. But, looking further a little bit there. I just thought, and the whole point of the question, to be clear, is I think Jay is right. Like, I think there are some guys where I'm not saying he's Allen Iverson. I'm just not. But Allen Iverson and Isaiah Thomas and just eventually – if you're good enough, you're tall enough. Like it's just a great. It doesn't make sense for everybody, and it's basic. It is a moving goalpost answer, but it's true. So
yeah.
All right, a couple more like kind of sticking to guys that I again no track record of me saying this, but I've talked about these guys in college this year. I'm going to read you a list of players who averaged more than 8.7 rebounds per game, and I'm going to give you the parameter. Right, this is a weird like query, but it'll make sense when I say it.
Okay.
So this is the list of players in the shot clock era who have averaged more than 8.7 rebounds per game in a season, who are 6'3" or shorter that played a full regular season.
In college or NBA?
College. 29 regular season games. This is shot clock era.
6'3"?
6'3" or shorter. So guards, 6'3" or shorter, that 8.7 rebounds per game. Gotcha. The list is Marquise Moore of George Mason, 10.9. Jordan Goodwin of St. Louis, 10.4. And Jahad Thomas of UMass Lowell, 9.0. The guy fourth on that list is Devin Carter.
Yeah,
now, I'm not you knew exactly. I heard you say it in the background. I know you knew where I was going with this, but
that's crazy.
It's insane, and people are going to go, okay, cool. He's a 6'3" guard. The rebounds, he's not going to do that in the NBA. It doesn't matter. What that tells me is he's going to work his tail off.
Yeah.
He's a guy that's an incredible defender that I think the Kings obviously could really use. I said this to someone like as the pick was happening, like Devin Carter's an incredible pick. I said, but they really need defensive front court help.
Yeah.
That's like the thing that like if they left this draft with defensive front court help, they could be a really strong 6th seed in the West, which anything can happen now. But less of a question, but just talk about Devin Carter thoughts, because I think he went in the right place. I think he went to the right team, and ultimately he's a guy that the defense is going to keep him on the floor. Very Davion Mitchell-esque, people are going to say. But he's a lot better than that, and I think the three-point shot's coming along.
Yeah, I think you're spot on all of that. I don't think he'll be an elite shooter like he kind of looked like he could have been this year at Providence, because I think it was a one-off year, at least on the role he was playing at Providence. But like you said, like even if he's not averaging 9-10 rebounds a game in the NBA, he's not going to. But instead of the normal 6'2", 6'3" guards averaging 2 rebounds or 1 rebound a game, he'll be there at 3 or 4, which is a massive difference maker. And like you said, crashing the boards, working hard, all those things. The Kings are interesting because, like, I think, and Devin Carter is like, I hate how people just say like, this guy's a dog, that guy's a dog. But like Devin Carter, like you look up a dictionary, he's probably there in some way. Like he is literally all over the place. He is a hound. Like he's so annoying to play against. I can imagine you can see it on the floor. Guys will say that of his opponents in the Big East. I just don't think the Kings, kind of like you said, they needed multiple other things realistically, and they had Davion, right? So here's my thing about that is like Devin Carter is a better version of Davion, most likely, right? So if Davion's still okay, he's still decent, you're making a little jump when you probably could have lived with having Davion and adding something over here of another need, because you don't need that upgrade right now. I don't think going from Davion to Devin Carter changes their trajectory at all. I just don't think it does. And I think with the timeline they're on, after the next 2 to 2, maybe 3 years, they'll be like, oh yeah, Devin Carter is good, but like, what do we do now? Because we're toast and everyone's leaving. So,
yeah, I'm with you. I think that's a good way to think about it. The upgrade there wasn't. If there's an opportunity to get better in a place that's a worse of a need, I think I'm with you. And they're not in a place where they can't draft a need. It's not like they're Detroit where like
right.
they can't draft a need. I think that's something that people misconstrue a lot. It's also something Mike Brown likes. So he's the kind of player that Mike Brown likes. So I think that really helps too. That's probably honestly why he ended up there.
He's gonna be good. He's gonna be very, very good. Like I'm not trying to. As Devin Carter question, like people think I hate Devin Carter. Providence fans think I hate them and him. I have no idea why. Maybe I like didn't talk about him enough or something. It's so funny if they're like, talk about Devin Carter, you hate Providence. I'm like, I really don't, but now I'm definitely not going to talk about them because you just said that. So if Devin Carter ever hears this, I like you as a player. It was the Providence fans that made me annoyed.
No, I get like Providence fans know that they're annoying. Actually, no, they don't. Why do you think Dalton Knecht fell outside the lottery? Let's just get this out of the way now.
I think it's age, and I think they don't see anything besides being a scorer. Yeah, that was pretty freaking obvious going into the draft. I don't see what they were expecting. And I think certain teams, it came to a point where like someone asked me, I forget who it was like he fell so far, like why not the Sixers take him there? Why not the Kings? Why not this team? And like at 13, 14, 15, 16. And I'm like, I think there are some teams like the Sixers who had their eyes on certain guys, and the Sixers were, and the Wizards were at 14 is a great example. Like, they were like, yeah, if Bub's here, he's our guy. That's why we traded for 14. We called the Blazers today to get the pick.
Absolutely.
That's why we're here. The Sixers, I think they wanted Jared McCain all along. The Heat obviously wanted the size and Khalil Ware. Maybe they didn't expect him to be there, and they were like, you know what? We don't care about everyone else because this is our guy. We didn't think he'd be there. So I think there's a level of that also, not just Dalton Knecht is 16 players worse than 16 players ahead of him. And then, like I said, the age and the one-dimensional ability, but it's kind of like Rob and Edie. Like when you're amazing at one thing, like you're going to be damn good at it, even in the league, and it's going to translate. And he's cold. Like Lakers got a good one. So
yeah, this isn't a victory lap, I promise. This is just
it should be.
Genuine surprise that happened.
Yeah.
And I know people are sitting here thinking like, okay, it's been X amount of time. We haven't talked about Bronny, whatever. We're going to do that in a minute because it just needs to be done as part of it. Like it's just.
I want to hear your opinion on that.
Let's just do it now. Let's just get it out of the way.
Yeah.
So I want to be as sincere as possible when I say this. And I want to hear what you think too, because I really do. I value what you think about stuff like this. That's not just like this guy went here and this is my evaluation. Like I really think that you think about things bigger than that. I think it's the most incredible family moment, cool thing we've seen in sports in a really long time. Like I want to make that abundantly clear when I lead my point, but I think people who've heard my opinion now long enough probably know where I'm going with this. He wasn't a draftable player. He never was in the last calendar year, and I don't think he would have been here in the next calendar year, depending on development and how far he goes. All of that to say that a kid that comes back from cardiac arrest 12 months later gets drafted regardless of the reason for it, I think it's an incredible story. I think it's something that we really, really need to take more time to appreciate what, it happens to guys of any age all the time, and for him to overcome that despite the poor season, despite that being an overcome and a challenge that he had to go through. I don't want to hear about the favoritism and all this other stuff. Like that's going to happen. That like when your father is X, Y, and Z person in any industry, it's going to get you different places. It just is, right? But from just a draft accountability, what the player was standpoint, even in this draft, I don't think he was a draftable player. And I don't mean that, again, this could have been a 15-minute open. I could have done this at the top of any podcast, and I could have found a way to articulate it better. But I need people to understand that, like, whether people are going too far in both directions. I'm understanding that, and I think we all get that. But at the same time, it's a really cool moment that balances out with the fact that it happened. Like, people get so irrationally, I don't know what I call it, angry, but just irrational. They just get so irrational about their opinion that they can't look past the fact that he wasn't a draftable type of he just wasn't developmentally a draftable prospect at that time. But then again, I hear the argument, 55, you can do whatever you want at that point, whatever. So I'm really curious what you think, because I think I land somewhere in the middle with awesome, incredible thing. I think LeBron's one of the greatest players of all time, who love him or hate him for his faults off the court and things with the GM and all that stuff. He still has a son who is at least good enough to be in these conversations and to work his way into that conversation, but it happened because it's his father.
Yeah, I think it's so cool. I think it's like, when you put it into perspective and you back up and take the names out of it, and you go, a dad and his son are not only playing in the NBA at the same time now, they're on the same team, and they might be on the same floor together at some point. Like, that is actually crazy. It's LeBron, so people are going to be mad or happy about anything he does, and it's polarizing. Everyone's, like you said, one way or another. So
even more so, like, before I'm going to let you finish that, even more so, take the name out of it. Like you said, it's a great way to think about it. But then just think about accolade for a second, right? Think about if that was any player in NBA history who was a top 15 player last year. Like, let's not get it twisted. That's what all NBA really does ultimately equate to at the end of the season, right? A top 15 all NBA player at the age of basically 40 is going to, like, just think about that for, like, top 15 player, 40 years old, playing with his son. That would be like Tom Brady playing for the Bucks, that Super Bowl, winning the Super Bowl, and his son being a wide receiver. Yeah. That is the equivalent we're talking about here.
It's sick, honestly. And, like, he was not a draftable prospect by any means. He maybe would have been next year. You never really know and stuff. And but at the same time, like you said, pick 55 in a weak draft class too. Like, there were a lot of undrafted guys, and there are guys that will stick in the league in some capacity for sure. And you could have used it on one of those guys, especially the Lakers, who need the depth and whatever. But if you get pick 55 to play legit minutes in the NBA, valuable minutes, I'll say that, not Bronny aside, like, that's a win right there. It's a W. And they'll force Bronny to play maybe more than he should have or earlier or whatever. Like, so that's not a fair comparison situation for them. But to your point, at pick 55, like, if it's pick 17, yeah, I'd be flaming them, like, you guys are dumb. But if you can spend basically the last pick in the drafts to keep literally the greatest player of all time on your team as he heads into free agency, like, if you can waste that pick, literally waste it and burn it without drafting a single player, if his son wasn't in the draft, if you could burn the pick and forfeit it to keep him on the team, you would do it in a heartbeat. So I don't think it's that big of a deal. I haven't spoken on this publicly, like, super much, because every single out, it's so freaking annoying. Like, ESPN and Stephen A and everybody talking about it. So I was like, you know what? No one needs to hear my opinion on this, because everyone has their own opinion. So I don't care.
Yeah, I mean, look, letting it breathe sometimes is a good way to do it. And honestly, like, I would just want to make sure at the 42-minute mark here, because I think we got some great stuff to get to. I think people just need to understand, whether they're hot-headed about it or not, that it's an incredible thing, and ultimately it happened because whatever reason. Like, people, like, I think we should all be able to admit, if we watch basketball, that it happened. Like, you watched USC games last year; they were a terrible team last year. Yeah. And, like, when he was on the floor and when he was fully healthy later in the season, you didn't know he was out there sometimes. Like, that has to be part of the story. And ultimately, if he makes a way for himself, like you said, he wants to, then I think the story works out perfectly.
I hope he's good. That's the last thing I'll say. Is I actually hope he's, like,
I do too.
I hope he ends up playing valuable minutes and being a good NBA player, because it'll just shut everyone up so fast, and they'll stop crying. Actually, it won't shut them up, but it doesn't matter. No. Irrelevant.
As you know, I'd like to value NBA history, and I hold it close to my heart. And history tells us that he will not be good because of NBA player legacy, but that's another story for another day. So I'm gonna play a little trivia with you for a second. Can you tell me the last time a white American player was the first player drafted that was American?
White player went first overall. White American.
White American was the first American drafted in the draft.
Wait, so it doesn't have the first pick. A white guy was the first American drafted.
Yeah.
Reed Shepherd.
That would be an awesome trivia question. No, it did happen before. I'll give you a hint.
Okay.
It was a first overall pick, and it was in the 70s.
Oh, I have no clue. Oh, maybe yes. Okay.
Kent Benson.
Yeah, I don't know who that is, to be honest. So here we go.
Kent Benson, 1977 to the Milwaukee Bucks. I bring it up because all things considered, like all the jokes and the stories about the headlines right now about Reed Shepherd, I'm just gonna let those be, and people can look them up if they want. Talk to me about the highs and the lows for Reed in the NBA and his fit in Houston specifically.
I think the lows won't be low and the highs won't be unbelievably high. He'll have his games, obviously, like every player does, good and bad. But the grand scheme of things, long term, and looking at the big picture of it all, I think he has a very high floor because of his shooting and his IQ and his defensive tenacity. But I think he has lower. People think he's like Steve Nash, or they call him Cocaine Curry and whatever. I'm like, this is ridiculous. Like, you guys, fans of teams of the Rockets fans, will say whatever they want, and I've seen some wild things from some known Rockets fans on Twitter and stuff, but I get it. They're excited. He's an awesome player and he fits what they need, and he's going to help out pretty early on. But I think he's like a legit, maybe like a 6 man of the year candidate in his peak or something like that. Maybe he starts at some capacity, like Mike Conley was my comp for him in terms of style and in terms of level. So I think it's actually a good one. So
that's good. Look, this is we don't tell each other a lot before pods, and I do that on purpose. And my next question was literally, is he JJ with good hands? So I think you answered that perfectly. So
I guess so. Yeah, I guess that's exactly what it is.
All right, last one. I have one more thing that's not a question that I kind of want to hold for. We're about to do. The title will say "Fixing the NBA Draft" with Ryan Hammer, but however you want to word that, I'm genuinely curious. You told me, for context for what we're about to get into, people being to know this. You texted me sometime last year. We were talking about something else, and fixing the NBA came up in a roundabout way, and you made and alluded to a list that you had somewhere, some secret list of like NBA fixes, and I was like, we're gonna call them that one day. Yeah. And so the draft is specifically what we're gonna talk about today. So before we do that, last question: what contender had the best draft that helped their title chances next year specifically?
That's a great question. I'm looking at the draft list. I mean, the Lakers getting connected is going to be massive because he's probably going to be first team all rookie. And like, that's what you need. Like, that's what you want if you're a contender. I think the T-Wolves are definitely up there. We already talked about them. The Celtics really didn't do they got Baylor, obviously I like, but I don't think he's going to like rapidly change everything for them. So what I said, the T-Wolves and the Lakers and probably the Thunder, just because Sam Presti never loses a draft. The guy is unbelievable. I can't believe what he does. So
I had a question at the top of the sheet that I was going to scrap. Were you confused by the direction, but you just answered it? Like the direction of Topic, and they obviously got Dylan Jones. We didn't know at the time. They basically went with guys that I would have thought at the time was kind of confusing if they really want to capitalize on a title window.
Right.
And then, 72 hours later, they signed Isaiah Hartenstein. So
they had a plan from the start. They
100%.
knew exactly what they were doing. They said, you know what? We're going to take the best player available, like we always do, because it's been working very much for us. We'll have either we'll have too many players and we'll have good trade assets or whatever. But I think they saw him on the board and they were like, oh, we didn't know they could be here. So yeah, we'll take him and we'll figure it out. We'll just figure it out later. So, and I think that you're right. They knew they could afford $30 million or $29 a year for Hartenstein. So they were like, we can take whoever we want in the draft.
I think that's beautifully put, because I honestly, when the Topic pick popped up, I was texting Thunder friends and guy on the show, great at the time, Grayson Hill has been on the show many times. He's like, I'm so confused, and I was like, buddy, I'm just as confused as you are, and I'm not a fan of the team. Okay, and I love Topic. I think he'll be really good moving forward, assuming the health. All right, so let's jump into the last segment here before we get out of here. Appreciate all the time so far. What is I already know where you're going with this because we talked about it a little bit already, but what is there a fix that Ryan Hammer has? Maybe it's not a fix. Maybe it's a thing that bothers you that we can talk out a fix, or that people can tell us fixes in the comments. But is there something about the draft specifically that just needs to change? By the way, all of this coming on the heels of the fact that second round debacle should have never happened. We should not have been doing this at 4 p.m. on a Thursday. I don't care if it's
in the studio. Like, what do we do? Come on. They have the guys crammed in with their families. Like it can only bring. So they were only told they could only bring 2 people with them, and so it's their parents, no agent, no other family members. They're in this crammed studio that they record first take in half the time. That was so stupid.
So that is the obvious solution. Let's just stick that.
Yeah, everyone knows that. There's no fix needed. That is the fix. Don't do it. Pretty simple.
The NBA is by the way, they are very good at walking stuff back. They have actually done things where they tried stuff and it didn't work out. I think this is one of those things that they're probably walking back soon. So what's an NBA draft fix?
So I think they're going to keep it on the second day still, but they're going to tweak how they do it and the timing and where and stuff because the teams love it. The team reps. I only talked to like 2 different people and then a couple different agents, but everyone that's in the actual business that really is what matters for the NBA and the teams. They love the second day because it gives them time to go home, actually sleep for more than 2 hours in the night and like reassess what they're going to do going into the second round. Like, great, these guys are still on the board or they're gone. Let's trade out. Let's trade up or whatever. So the second day will stay. It's not going to go anywhere, but how it works, like you said, timing and whatever, is probably going to change for sure. So,
all right, what you got for me?
The forfeited picks need to go. They got to stop. I can't believe they're still doing this where like every team tampers in basically every big free agency thing is tampering. Like, are they going to take the Sixers pick again next year because Joel Embiid made a funny face at Paul George on the NBA Finals broadcast? Like, I can't, like, it's crazy. So realistically, what should happen is if they say, hey, you know what? Joel Embiid was tampering. We're going to take your pick away. They should give it to the Clippers. It's a second-round pick. They're always late second-round picks and second-round picks only. They're not going to make their teams forfeit their first-round picks unless something crazy happened. But for tampering, it's always second-round picks. Just give them to the team that got affected. Like when they were going over the Jalen Brunson stuff, just give a pick to the Mavs. Just give it to the Mavs instead of making anyone forfeit it because you're affecting the players, you're affecting the agents and all their financial situations, and you're affecting the teams and the overall like league and the idea of the draft itself of 60 picks because it's never 60 picks anymore. So.
Yeah, it's really frustrating. Like seeing that I know we just talked about Bronny and the throwaway and this and that in the 50s, but like that was the difference between J.D. Davidson getting drafted a couple years ago and not getting drafted, right? Like it's the ability. Like I think the Celtics took him at 60 or 58. Like it was 59, something like that, right? Where there was actually a pick available. I just for some reason remember him because a guy that was teetering at the end of that draft and he ended up getting drafted. I use him as an example, but there are so many times where I'm like, okay, again, like you make a great point. It is rampantly happening. The NBA is a relationship business, and I don't have a fix for my thing we're going to talk about in a second. It was a kind of a question, kind of a thing that would work in this area as well, but I don't have a fix for it. But I think it is running rampant as well, and it kind of ties to the relationship aspect of things. Like you said, the guys that really cared about the draft, the guys that worked in the industry, those were the ones that benefited from the change with the second round thing. Who benefits from tampering? Like at the end of the day, it's the team and the person that gets the player in the end, like you said, right? So whether people are going to agree with your solution or not, like giving the pick to the poor team that didn't lose the guy, like it's kind of the best way to fix it. Like it just is. In a roundabout way, I'm kind of landing the plane on agreeing with you. And at the end of the day, I still don't think the NBA thinks it's a good solution.
That's because the NBA thinks, I don't know what they think actually. I was going to say something stupid, but they think that they need to discipline teams and not let it happen anymore. They're still going to do it. They don't care about pick 58 and 49, and they don't care enough if they're going to go get someone they want in free agency the year before. They literally don't care. The teams that are doing it don't care. At least the Suns. Yeah. It's literally the Suns every year forfeiting a pick every single year.
Yep. And look, eventually could it come back to bite them and not having that asset? Sure.
Suns their front office is a bunch of. Not only a bunch of idiots, but they're very stupid and irresponsible. So, yeah.
New owner syndrome has caught up to them a little bit here. So, I mean, look, at the end of the day with the whole tampering thing, second round picks, like, again, like you said, it's going to happen. The thought process, though, where I mentioned the NBA thing because they ultimately do have a big hand in this decision of where this could lead. Because if you think about now with the second apron that's coming into effect, and again, let's just be upfront about this. None of us other than Bobby Marks really understand this stuff.
Yeah, I know.
So, like, let me just make that abundantly clear. But if I understand the second apron paperwork right, like reading it and understanding it, your first round pick, your furthest one out that like is essentially the step-in rule now where you can't trade that pick in the future concurrently years, whatever, right? That's why we do the 29 pick, 31 pick, et cetera.
Right.
That 31 pick gets frozen if you're in the second apron.
Mm-hmm.
So if they have the power to do that to a team that spends too much money, which, by the way, talking about teams that if teams care, they're going to do the tampering thing. They don't care. Teams also are going to spend money. They don't care.
Yeah, exactly.
Like we just saw that with Boston. They just gave Derek White, as we're recording this today, they gave him 4 years, like $132 million. They gave Tatum. By the way, I did the math. Tatum makes like $38,000 a day.
Can I get one of those days?
Right. Like,
damn,
it's ridiculous. Like, think about like if the teams have the power to do that, they have the power to pay Jason Tatum.
Yeah.
The same day that they, by the way, are telling us that they're going to sell the team.
That was nonsense.
I was hoping that it would slide under the radar. Like, by the way, won a championship. Congratulations. Hey, by the way, I'm selling the team for like $800 billion, which is going to pave way for expansion. That's another conversation for another day. But the point is I'm just saying if teams have the power to do that, they have the power to change. Like, if the NBA has the power to do that, they have the power to change how the second round picks works, and they won't do it. Anything else fix-wise before I give you mine?
No, I used to think that, well, this is before they added another two-way contract, and I thought I still think 50-50 about it, but adding a third round to the NBA draft, I know people probably hate the sound of that, but my reasonings before the two-way thing was, especially it was right after the COVID pandemic, kind of that's one season where we had the most active NBA players in history because you get test positive or contact tracing, whatever, and there were so many random guys being thrown into the league. That plot made me look into the undrafted free agent market in history, the last like 20 years, and they're right basically within 24 hours of the draft ending. There's like 50 plus every single year undrafted free agent signings. All the two ways get filled. Sometimes not all of them. Sometimes they let it fight out in summer league, but exhibit 10s, summer league deals, everything. And now the Suns are the last team to get their G League affiliate finally in play for next season. So everyone has a G League affiliate team, and there's too much talent in the NBA. Like, I wanted to add a two-way. I wanted to add a third round so that you can actually invest in your G League guys instead of just saying, we're going to go sign Drew Smith, which is a real player, and whoever, and throw them onto our G League team for the year. And like, we'll just let our G League team kind of do whatever. And they might have one or two players that we find useful and call up or try to give them a real contract or something like that throughout the year. I, in a way, like how MLB does it with the farm system, but I more like how international soccer does it. And I think NBA out of all the American sports has the most similarities to international soccer because of its international game. And I think having some kind of quote unquote youth academy, right, or second team or something like that to be able to really invest in instead of just saying we'll have our two ways and we have a G League team and that's kind of that. I think this offers the third round would allow you to do that because you can take flyers on guys and stuff like that. You'll have guys that will not go back to college as often and try to manipulate that system a little bit like we've seen in the last few years. I know I rambled a bit, but I did not feel confident on it anymore because they added the two-way and expansion obviously is going to be coming. So
that's
I think
your monkey wrench right there.
Yep. And they need to invest a little bit in the long-term players. So I think it would help those kind of teams. But I have a lot of weird thoughts about it, but yeah.
No, it's great. I think it's something that I don't think it's talked about at the scale that it should. And I know that you had that kind of sitting in the chamber there. So I think it's really great. So yeah, no, expansion's your monkey wrench. That's what's going to throw everything off. Yeah. You're going to have two teams that, on record, I'm going to say this, they're going to go for no less than $8.5 billion between the two of them. They're going to go for probably $9 billion. Like, I think it'll go 4.5. So
wow.
I'll give you one thing and we'll get out of here. I don't have a fix, but I'll tell you, I'm just going to point out the problem because eventually maybe this leads to a solution. Justin Edwards became the first number one recruit to go undrafted since recruiting services began, which I believe is now almost 2 decades. I will go ahead and tell you the caveat to this, that he averaged 8.8 points per game, 3.4 rebounds per game, and 0.9 assists per game on 49, 37, 78 splits. He also, I will tell you that is an important nugget, he's also part of Clutch, which also represents Bronny James, and a good large portion of guys that we see things happen to them and we think they're going to be marketed well, and they really don't. And this is not calling out Clutch. CAA does this too. I think there's a bunch of agents out there, not discrediting agents though. I've met some incredible guys out there that do their job very well. I'm not calling, this is not me calling out Rich Paul. This is not what the cutout clip is going to be. But what I think it is I think there's a problem and there's an imbalance. And you mentioned the tampering thing earlier. I think there's an imbalance in how we do business with the draft and with prospects and how we affect these guys' lives. Because at the end of the day, who you sign with an agent is essentially the most important decision you're going to make as a professional if you decide to play basketball, whether you play for 5 days or whether you play for 5 years or whether you play for your entire career like LeBron. Who you sign, I should probably use a different example there, but who you sign as an agent is the most important decision you make. It does nothing else matters. Like where you go to college is important in your decision. What team you get drafted to, what skill and development guy you put around you, what mental health coach, whatever. All of this stuff that I think is really important the way we do business now as athletes. Your agent dictates so much of your career, and they can also, in a single second, because of a conversation with a team, completely ruin it as well.
No, you're right. And like you said, there's no hard to fix because it's so ingrained into the system, the roots of how everything works in the NBA and especially the draft, that you're never going to be able just to get out of how it works. It is 100% true. And like the agent will make a big, because obviously they get paid if you get paid, right? So the biggest difference they'll make is if instead of going undrafted, you'll go pick 40 or pick 30 or whatever. And it's hard because I speak to a lot of agents and I'll never single anyone out, obviously, but there are a ton of people who represent players who hit me up all the time, like, hey, like, can you like put something out about this guy, like really good, like rank him high? I'm like, I'm not going to do that. Like, I'm not going to rank your guy high just because like, and I don't necessarily all the time get offered money for that. I know that media outlets do get offered and they take money from agencies to boost guys' stock up. And like, I'm not saying this is ESPN. I'm saying if ESPN, obviously, because it's ESPN, if ESPN got paid X dollars, thousands of dollars to put Justin Edwards, say, as their 20th best prospect instead of 50, all of a sudden they might do it. I'm not saying like I said, I'm not saying Gavoni or ESPN does that. That was the first one that came to mind. And it's a real thing. And they say, hey, like, oh, like, can you at least share like this video and like maybe that they're doing this and this and this and like they're being considered in this pick range. I'm like, I can't say that if you're telling me they're being considered there. Like, I can't just take your word for that because unless I really believe them. Like, if Baylor Shireman's agent, he did not reach out to me after seeing all my posts about him and said, hey, you want to put something out about him? I would, because I support, like, that's a good reasoning to do that. But it happens. It's the truth of it's the nature of the kind of the sport and stuff like that and the landscape. And it is a business, and I get that. But you said you didn't call it Rich Paul, but Rich Paul has displayed some blissful ignorance. I think everyone would agree on this draft cycle, and I'll gladly say that. And he's never going to hear this anyway, so it doesn't matter. But he definitely has, and it's kind of irresponsible. But again, that's the world we live in. So,
yeah, I think it's a beautiful way to put it, because at the end of the day, like whether people are talking to agents or not, if you really want to get a good scope of how things are, go to an event that's not the NBA draft. Go to an event that's not the combine. Go to a Portsmouth for that matter, right? Go to a college game. Go to a college tournament. I had some incredible conversations this year with some agents at MTEs. I won't name what the MT was or anything like that for confidence reasons, but these are college November events, and there are agents there that are and these are agents of guys that like are probably in that two-way contract like we talked about, right? Like that two-way, that Exhibit 10 where it's even like, I mean, most NBA fans don't even know what an Exhibit 10 is. Like go Google that. Like get an understanding of what your team's doing when you see this college guy you watched and you go, or maybe you didn't. Maybe you're on the other side of things and you realize, okay, how did that guy get that contract? Why did that guy get there, right? Why did I used the example before, but why did Terquavion Smith, right? We all had him as a lottery, as a draftable prospect, and then he's the first player to sign a deal. Something about that seem off? Like we all know what happened there, right? Yeah. We all know and understand, and that's part of my problem, part of my point. So I think it's beautifully put. I appreciate your input there. I think it's valuable. And again, I'm glad you clarified and caveated like examples, because I don't want people to sit here and be like, well, Ryan talks to this agent and he aggregates it, because it's just not true. I don't want that to be the case. I want people to understand that I think the way you put it with Rich Paul and the, what was it, blissful ignorance or something like that? What did you say? Blissful ignorance?
Yeah, people say ignorance is bliss. It's true.
And well, look, for Justin Edwards is probably not feeling that way right now, and that was my whole point. So, like he's the first Kentucky guard, like really ever, that didn't go drafted in any way, and have a meaningful moment here after his first year of college as a freshman. But could he have benefited from coming back? I don't know. All right, I think that was really fun. I think we pretty much hit everything that I wanted to. Anything else about the draft, free agency? That obviously we didn't talk about free agency today, but things have swirled, Paul George, et cetera. But anything else about the draft that you want to talk about on the way out?
I'm good. We covered a lot. We covered a whole ton. It was a fun cycle because it was crazy. And just the draft night itself, and even looking back, we were like looking at it before this, like the list. I'm like, what a weird draft class this is. I have no idea how it's gonna pan out. So who knows?
2025 seems to be. Look, we all don't know.
Yeah,
I mean, things are just big crapshoots even a couple years into it, but 2025 should be really, really fun. I think there's an incredible top 5. I'm keeping my eye on the guy at Baylor there, under Scott Drew. That's the guy I've got my eye on. Who
he's crazy. He's playing with Bahamas too right now, and he's posterizing. I think he posterized Nurkic in a scrimmage yesterday. I was like, good God, this kid's crazy.
Yeah, Edgecombe for those who don't know, right?
Yeah.
So, all right, plug away, and then we'll get out of here.
All good. Search my name on social media, and you'll find it on the platforms, I hope. And that's that.
All right. Well, I appreciate it as always. Ryan has always been incredible to us, and please show him the support and the love that you guys show this show all the time. A link's to the top of the description for him there. College basketball content. We'll have some more stuff with him, hopefully in the college basketball realm early on in the year. Get his thoughts off the record about some of the teams in the magazine. There's only 361 teams to talk about, so I gotta start talking to folks. Some good opinions, and yours is one of the ones I believe and trust the most. So, as always, my friend, I greatly appreciate you.
And you too, Seth. Thanks for having me on again.